couple of things to share with you. First, Paul mentioned the newcomers class next Sunday at 9 o'clock, and please consider yourself invited if you'd like to learn more about our church. And then the following Sunday, February 4th, we'll have New Member Sunday, and anyone who's made the decision to join our church, please just let me know, and we'll welcome you on that day. Also, today after church, I have tickets for Interfaith Ministries Super Bowl. It's held on the Friday before the game that some people enjoy, but others of us enjoy endless bowls of soup. At First Presbyterian Church, it's a citywide gathering, and it funds the homeless programs, 5 different homeless shelters and the overflow shelter that Interfaith Ministries has all year long. This week, our daughter-in-law lost her grandfather, and although she is 30 years old, his was the very first death of someone important in her life that she has experienced. My son and I were talking because, on the other hand, he and our other 2 children have experienced many deaths throughout their young lives, from beloved church friends to grandparents and even their own peers. They were forced to come to terms with death very early in their life, and each one of them was encouraged to normalize death as just part of what it means to live. Death and salvation were not occasional subjects in our house. We processed the physical parts of death, even during meal times. And it is true that I took them on a hands-on backstage tour of a mortuary when they were ages 6, 5, and 3. It's sad. I know. Growing up with me as a mother had its oddities. They regularly attended hospital and nursing home visits with me and saw the aging process up close and personal. And as I reflect back on this experience and conversation and this aspect of death that was always with them, I'm starting to wonder if their multiple threats to kill their siblings might have been a result of this early exposure. Oh, they do? Good. Okay, we're safe. Good. So eventually they had the regular questions that people have about the physical and spiritual aspects of death, like, if a body stays on earth and a spirit goes to heaven, how will we know Grandma when we get there? If we don't have a body in heaven, then how will we have voices and ears so we can communicate with each other? How does God decide which people get to heaven and which ones don't? What age will our spirits be when we get to heaven? Is it going to be the age we were on earth when we died, or the age we think we are in our souls, or somewhere in the middle? The Hebrew Bible offers this reflection from about the 7th century BCE, and it simply identifies eternal wisdom about life and death, about morality and legacy. It's our traditional word for today, and it's in your bulletin. See, I have set before you life and good, death and evil, if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you today, by loving the Lord your God, by walking in God's ways, by keeping God's commandments and statutes and rules, then you shall live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land that you are entering to take possession of it. This is from Deuteronomy 30. In many cultures and religions, death is the problem of human existence. We see it sort of as painful. We want to avoid it. We curse it. The loss of a loved one can be excruciatingly difficult, and grief can alter our lives for years. At its very best, we can see it as a necessary evil. But Lloyd Rue wrote in the Fourth R magazine of Westar Institute, and I quote, "From the perspective of evolutionary wisdom, death is not a problem at all. It's a solution." So we're continuing our series today on Shining a New Light, and I'm offering some of the research and thought from the best progressive theologians in the world today. And today's topic is a very uplifting one, death and salvation. Rue notes that many aspects of organisms don't need to die. He says single-cell organisms reproduce by simply dividing into halves, each half becoming a distinct individual capable of further subdivision. For all of you biologists, you'll totally understand this. He says, death is not part of the picture for those organisms because both halves go on living and enjoying a virtual immortality. Death, he said, has no sting to an amoeba. Only sexually reproducing multicellular organisms have to die. And the reason has to do with the divergence of cells into germline and soma lines. It turns out that the inevitability of our deaths is actually a necessary condition for the lives that we live. We have to die because we get to live. Death, he says, is a mere entrance fee to be paid on the way out. The splendors of human life include memories and love, joy, wonder, wisdom, longing, learning, and because of these elements in our lives that are made possible by our biological makeup, we're destined to die. So Rue sees grief and death as a measure of the gratitude we hold for the loved one we mourn. 14 years ago, I got a call from a mortuary asking if I could conduct a funeral for a woman named Kayla Sue Turnus. Some of you who work at WSU might remember her. She worked there. I didn't know her, but we were both about the same age at the time, certainly too young to die, 40-ish. She died from breast cancer. She was married, like I am. She had 2 children. And although I didn't know Kayla, I learned a lot about life and death from her. When I met with her family, they came in carrying this large manila envelope. It was full of items that Kayla had put together for her own service. And in it were not only specific plans, but information about the mortuary, the grave site, and the funeral itself. I later found out that Kayla walked through the cemetery, chose and paid for her lot while she was in her 30s. She kept a journal as she lived and as she died, which her family gave to me. She had put together poems, notes, and letters for every member of her family, her favorite Bible verses, her philosophy about life, and her thoughts about death. What a gift Kayla left her family. She normalized her own death at an early age, and she left her family this treasure of physical, spiritual, and emotional ways to mourn. If she could do that at her age, it seems to me that most of us could do the same thing too. We can prepare for our deaths as a normal, planned part of our lives. Just as we save money and make plans for retirement, what if we could pay for and make plans for our own deaths? Yes, Kayla's death was known to her before it happened, but so is ours. We don't know when it will happen, but we know that it will happen. There's no better time to start writing letters to our families and planning our services and collecting information to be used when that inevitable thing happens. And there's no better time to make arrangements for the disposition of our money, too. To do so makes a spiritual statement. It makes a spiritual statement. It tells those around us what we value, that we are not afraid, that we're grateful for our lives, that our spirits will be reunited with God, and that we are at peace with ourselves, our lives, our relationships, our God. For many, salvation has something to do with what happens when a person dies. And salvation has been understood to be a discrete, atomic process that happens just one soul at a time. But progressive Christianity actually expands that understanding to include salvation as molecular and social, according to Loyal Rue. He suggests some synonyms for salvation would be sustainability and viability. Now, think about that for a minute. Sustainability and viability as synonyms for salvation. We save individuals, he writes, by enhancing the solidarity of their communities. And we save communities by nurturing and enabling their individual members. For humans in particular, salvation will be a matter of achieving personality and sociality simultaneously. In other words, we're not saved at our deaths or individually as much as we're called to work together in groups, our neighborhoods, our cities, our states. This happened yesterday, by the way, not only in this community, but around the globe, to ensure that every person receives what they need. This is what salvation said Lloyd Rue. Our salvation is found in God, but it's also found in one another. You didn't know you had the power to be salvific, did you? You have the power to be a part of the salvation of our city, of your neighborhood, of our state. I think this is as ancient as Deuteronomy, when it's written, if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God by walking in his ways, then you shall live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to take possession of it. So our salvation is found by our choices of how we live in community with others. As Deuteronomy indicates, our salvation is part of our being in the world. It's tied to our land and to our legacy. Now let's put it all together. If death ends with gratitude for the wonder and the wisdom of life, and then salvation is about community, then the possibilities are endless and exciting. Each time a child is born, we have the opportunity to ensure his or her safety in the community. We can mentor children, provide safe social systems, educational systems, scholarships, a community that values and respects them. To do so means to participate in salvation. As Paul was talking about the chalice that he received from a Nicaraguan woman, he was talking about her offering her life, her work, her love across country. She was participating in salvation. When we look at our lives and we consider our own legacies, we can count the love we have shared, the forgiveness we have offered, the activism we took part in, the lives we touched, the delight we experienced. Those are part of our salvation. We don't need to have anxiety about fear and death. It's a normal part of living, and it's what happens to everyone who lives. We must die because we get to live. Our salvation is tied to how we treat the land we live on and the people who live near us and far from us. The more sustainability, the more viability we establish in our communities, the more we can celebrate the salvation of life. And to succeed in achieving these goals is all the glory we will ever need. I leave you to think on these things today.